New Orleans is a city where the boundary between the living and the dead is notoriously thin and porous. The air hangs heavy with humidity and history in the heart of the French Quarter. Visitors flock to the vibrant streets, seeking jazz and joy, but often find something far more sinister lurking in the shadows. Among the pastel-colored buildings and wrought iron balconies stands the Provincial Hotel on Chartres Street. It appears charming and inviting to the unsuspecting tourist looking for a quiet retreat. However, locals whisper about the darkness that resides within those walls. The building does not just house guests for the night, it seems to house memories of pain that refuse to fade away into the past. The architecture of the Provincial Hotel reflects the timeless elegance of the Old South, with its lush courtyards and gas lamps. Yet there is a heaviness to the atmosphere that many guests notice the moment they step onto the property. It is a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes that track your every movement from the dark corners. The silence in the courtyards during the late hours is not peaceful, but rather pregnant with anticipation. Many who stay here claim that the history of the ground is not merely recorded in books, but is etched into the very foundation. The stones themselves seem to vibrate with the residual energy of a bygone era filled with suffering. To understand the haunting of the Provincial Hotel, one must look back to the time before the luxury suites and comfortable beds. The land upon which the hotel sits has seen the horrors of war and the desperation of the dying. During the turbulent years of the American Civil War, the site was home to a military hospital. This was a place where wounded Confederate soldiers were brought in droves, broken and bleeding from the battlefields. The walls that now hear the laughter of tourists once echoed with the agonizing screams of men facing amputation without anesthesia. The soil beneath the beautifully manicured gardens drank deep of the blood spilled during those dark days. The transformation from a place of healing and death to a place of hospitality has done little to quiet the spirits that linger there. It is said that the intense emotions felt by the soldiers in their final moments imprinted upon the location. Fear and pain and the desperate longing for home created a spiritual scar that time has failed to heal. The hotel consists of 5 buildings, and building number 5 is widely considered to be the epicenter of the paranormal activity. It is in this specific structure that the veil seems thinnest, and the past bleeds through into the present with terrifying regularity. Guests assigned to rooms in this building often request transfers after just one night. Imagine walking down the dim hallways of building number 5 late at night when the city outside has quieted down. The air temperature drops suddenly, and you can see your breath misting in front of your face despite the Louisiana heat. A metallic scent of iron and copper fills your nostrils, reminiscent of old blood and rusted surgical tools. You hear the faint sound of footsteps pacing the floorboards behind you. But when you turn around, the corridor is empty. This is the welcome that the Provincial Hotel offers to those who dare to explore its history. It is a sensory immersion into a nightmare that ended over a century ago for the living, but continues for the dead. The historical records show that the hospital on this site was known for its high mortality rate during the conflict. Medical practices in the 19th century were primitive by modern standards, and infection was a rampant killer. Surgeons worked tirelessly in blood-soaked aprons, moving from one patient to another with the same unwashed instruments. The sheer volume of trauma that occurred within the footprint of the hotel is difficult to comprehend. Hundreds, if not thousands, of young men took their last ragged breaths here, far from their families. Their bodies were often piled in the courtyards, waiting for burial, while the surgeons turned back to the next screaming soldier. It is this specific imagery of the Confederate hospital that manifests most frequently to the terrified guests of the Provincial Hotel. There are countless reports of visitors waking up in the middle of the night to a scene of absolute horror. They describe the room dissolving around them, replaced by the vision of a crowded hospital ward. Phantom beds line the walls, occupied by moaning soldiers in gray uniforms wrapped in bloody bandages. The smell of ether and decay becomes overpowering, choking the witness with the stench of death. These residual hauntings play out like a broken record, repeating the same tragic moments over and over again. One of the most chilling phenomena reported involves the elevators in the hotel, which seem to have a mind of their own. Guests have pressed the button for their floor, only to have the doors open on a completely different level. When the doors slide apart, they are not greeted by a hotel hallway, but by a bustling 19th century infirmary. They see nurses in period attire rushing past with basins of water and surgeons sawing through bone. The sights and sounds are so vivid and realistic that the witnesses are often paralyzed with fear. Then the doors close, and the vision vanishes, leaving the guest trembling in the modern elevator car. The apparitions are not limited to the nameless masses of wounded soldiers, but include specific recurring figures. A stern-looking surgeon is often seen roaming the halls or standing at the foot of guest beds. He is described as wearing a long coat stained dark with fluids and carrying a demeanor of intense focus. Some claim he inspects the living guests, as if assessing their injuries before shaking his head and fading away. His presence is commanding and terrifying, bringing with it a wave of authoritative dread. It is as if he is still on duty, trying to save lives that were lost long ago. Housekeepers at the Provincial Hotel have their own collection of bone-chilling stories that they whisper among themselves. They are the ones who have to enter the rooms after the guests have fled in terror. There are reports of maids entering a room to clean only find the bed sheets soaked in fresh red blood. Panic ensues as they rush to report a crime or a medical emergency to the management. However, when they return moments later with assistance, the blood has completely vanished, leaving crisp white linens. It is a psychological assault that leaves the staff questioning their own sanity and reluctant to work alone. The recurring manifestation of blood is a central theme in the hauntings of the Provincial Hotel. Pools of blood have been seen appearing on the floorboards in the corridors, only to disappear when looked at closely. It is as if the building is bleeding out the memories of the amputation surgeries that took place there. Guests have reported stepping into sticky puddles in the dark, only to turn on the lights and find the floor dry. The sensation of the viscous fluid is incredibly real and disturbing. This phantom blood serves as a grim reminder of the carnage that the earth beneath the hotel absorbed during the war. Another frequent visitor from the other side is a young soldier who seems confused and lost in the modern world. He is often seen sitting on the edge of the bed in various rooms, appearing solid and lifelike. Guests initially mistake him for an intruder or a drunk person who has entered the wrong room. He wears a gray wool uniform that looks tattered and dirty from the hardships of the battlefield. He often speaks asking for water or calling out for his mother in a thick accent. Before the startled guest can react or answer him, he dissolves into a mist and floats away through the wall. The audio phenomena at the Provincial Hotel are just as prevalent and disturbing as the visual apparitions. Voices are often heard in the dead of night, carrying on conversations in the empty courtyards. Guests report hearing the distinct sounds of groaning and crying coming from inside the walls of their rooms. The cries are filled with such anguish and despair that they make it impossible to sleep. Sometimes the sounds are of a more mechanical nature, like the clatter of metal trays or the rolling of gurneys. These auditory hallucinations create a soundscape of suffering that envelops the listener in the tragedy of the past. Electronic voice phenomena, or EVP sessions conducted at the hotel, have captured chilling responses from the entities. Paranormal investigators have recorded voices whispering names and dates that correspond to the Civil War era. The voices often sound weary and exhausted, pleading for help or release from their torment. In one famous recording, a voice is clearly heard saying, "Tell her I love her," presumably a dying soldier's final message. These recordings provide compelling evidence that the spirits are not just residual recordings, but intelligent entities. They seem aware of the living and are reaching out across the divide. The courtyard of the Provincial Hotel, with its beautiful fountain and pool, is another hotspot for supernatural encounters. Guests relaxing by the water in the evening have reported seeing reflections that do not belong to them. Looking down into the dark water, see the faces of soldiers staring back with hollow eyes. Sometimes the water appears to turn red for a split second, as if transforming into blood. The tranquility of the outdoor space is often shattered by these glimpses into the spectral realm. It is a place where the barrier is thin, and the past is always rippling just below the surface. There is a particular room in building number 5 that has a reputation for being the most haunted of all. Guests who stay in this room often report the sensation of being held down by unseen hands. This phenomenon, known as sleep paralysis, takes on a terrifying twist in the context of the hotel. Victims describe waking up unable to move, while dark figures surround their bed, peering down at them. They feel the pressure of hands on their chest and legs, as if they are being restrained for surgery. The experience is visceral and traumatizing, leaving the guest gasping for air when they finally regain control. The female spirits of the Provincial Hotel are less common, but equally impactful when they do appear. A woman dressed as a nurse from the 1860s has been spotted tending to the invisible wounded. She moves with a graceful urgency, her long skirt rustling softly against the floor as she passes. Unlike the soldiers or the surgeon, her presence is usually described as comforting rather than menacing. She seems to be a guardian spirit, eternally locked in her duty to care for the suffering men. However, seeing a translucent figure walk through a closed door is enough to unnerve even the bravest traveler. Music often plays a role in the hauntings, with guests reporting the faint sound of old military tunes, the ghostly melody of a harmonica, or a distant drum beat can be heard drifting through the air conditioning vents. These sounds seem to originate from a time when music was the only comfort for the soldiers facing death. The tunes are melancholic and slow, echoing the sadness of the defeated Confederate army. It adds a layer of sorrow to the atmosphere, reminding everyone that these ghosts were once young men with lives and loves. The hotel becomes a time capsule, preserving the soundtrack of a lost generation. The management and staff of the Provincial Hotel are well aware of the stories and the reputation of the property. While they do not advertise the hauntings, they do not deny the experiences of their guests. Many employees have worked there for years and have developed a respectful relationship with the spirits. They treat the unseen residents with a quiet acknowledgement, often saying good morning to empty rooms. This acceptance seems to keep the activity at a manageable level, preventing it from becoming violent. It is a coexistence between the modern hospitality industry and the restless dead. Skeptics often try to dismiss the stories as the result of overactive imaginations or the power of suggestion. They argue that the creaking floorboards and drafts are simply the quirks of an old building in a settling city. However, the consistency of the reports from people who have no prior knowledge of the history is hard to ignore. guests from all over the world describe the same soldiers, the same surgeon, and the same bloody sheets. This shared experience suggests that there is an objective reality to the hauntings at the Provincial. It is not just in their heads, it is in the very fabric of the hotel. One particularly harrowing account comes from a couple who stayed at the Provincial Hotel for their honeymoon. They were excited to explore the romantic side of New Orleans and had no interest in ghost stories. On their second night, the wife woke up to the sound of heavy breathing right beside her ear. She assumed it was her husband, but when she turned, she saw he was fast asleep, facing away. Standing over her was a shadowy figure of a man with a bandage wrapped around his head. He leaned in close, his cold breath washing over her face before he vanished into the darkness. The psychological impact of these encounters can be profound and long-lasting for those who experience them. It challenges their understanding of reality and forces them to confront the existence of the afterlife. Many guests leave the Provincial Hotel with a newfound belief in the supernatural and a story they will never forget. They return home with memories not of jazz and beignets, but of fear and the touch of the unknown. The hotel leaves a mark on its visitors, just as the history has left a mark on the land. It is a souvenir that cannot be bought in a gift shop. The connection between the Provincial Hotel and the history of New Orleans is inextricable and deep. The city honors its dead in a way that few other places in the United States do. The hauntings at the hotel are seen by many as a vital part of the cultural heritage of the French Quarter. They serve as a reminder of the sacrifices made and the tragedies endured during the Civil War. By acknowledging the ghosts, the living pay tribute to the memories of those who died on that soil. It is a form of historical preservation that goes beyond plaques and monuments. Some paranormal investigators believe that the limestone used in the construction of the area acts as a battery. This stone theory suggests that the minerals in the ground can record and store emotional energy when the conditions are right, such as during a thunderstorm or a time of high humidity. This energy is replayed. This would explain why the hauntings are often repetitive, appearing like a loop of film. The intense suffering of the hospital patients provided the massive emotional charge needed to imprint the stone. The Provincial Hotel is essentially a massive recording device playing back the past. The fire that destroyed the original hospital buildings in the 1870s adds another layer to the tragedy. It is believed that the fire trapped some of the spirits, confusing them and binding them further to the location. The destruction of the physical structure did not release the energy, it merely compressed it into the land. When the new buildings were constructed, they were built directly on top of this spiritual pressure cooker. The foundations of the Provincial Hotel dig deep into the charred remains and the bones of the past. This physical connection acts as a conduit for the paranormal activity. There are rumors of a hidden room or a sealed-off basement area where the activity is most intense. While the hotel staff denies the existence of such a place, the legends persist among the local guides. It is said that in this dark recess, the tools of the surgeons and the personal effects of the soldiers are buried. If such a place exists, it would be the heart of the haunting, a focal point for the entities. The idea of a forgotten chamber filled with relics of death adds a gothic mystery to the hotel. It is the secret that the building whispers, but never fully reveals. As the sun sets over the Mississippi River and the shadows lengthen, the Provincial Hotel undergoes a transformation. The warm colors of the day fade into the cool blues and grays of the twilight. This is the time when the atmosphere shifts and the veil begins to thin once again. Guests returning from dinner often hurry through the courtyards, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on them. The safety of their rooms feels precarious, as if the locks on the doors are mere suggestions to the spirits. The night belongs to the dead. In this corner of the French Quarter, the encounter with the supernatural is not always visual or auditory. Sometimes it is purely emotional. Guests have reported being overcome by sudden waves of intense sadness or anxiety for no apparent reason. They find themselves weeping uncontrollably in their rooms, feeling a grief that is not their own. This empathetic haunting is perhaps the most insidious form of contact, as it invades the mind. It is the spirits sharing their burden, forcing the living to feel a fraction of their pain. The emotional residue of the hospital is a heavy cloak that drapes over anyone sensitive enough to feel it. Despite the terror and the fear, the Provincial Hotel remains a popular destination for travelers. The allure of the unknown and the chance to brush against history draws people in. There is a certain thrill in staying in a place that is acknowledged as one of the most haunted in America. It speaks to the human fascination with death and the desire to know what lies beyond. The guests are participants in a nightly drama that has been playing out for over 150 years. They are the audience for the restless spirits who refuse to leave the stage. The haunting of the Provincial Hotel is a testament to the power of place and memory. It is a story that is written in blood and whispered in the dark corners of the night. The soldiers and surgeons who once walked these grounds have not truly left. They have simply changed form. They remain as echoes of a time when the nation was torn apart and brother fought brother. Their presence is a somber reminder that some wounds are too deep to ever fully heal. The hotel stands as a monument to their suffering, a beautiful tomb for the unquiet dead. As you lay your head on the pillow in one of the antique beds of the Provincial, listen closely. You might hear the distant sound of a fiddle playing a mournful tune, or the soft tread of boots on the floor. Do not open your eyes if you feel a cold breath on your cheek or a weight on the mattress. It is just the past checking in on you, ensuring that you do not forget where you are. You are a guest in their house, and they have been here much longer than you. The Provincial Hotel belongs to them, and they are merely allowing you to stay for a while. The morning light brings relief as the shadows retreat, and the birds begin to sing in the courtyard. The horrors of the night seem like a bad dream, as the aroma of coffee fills the air. Yet as you pack your bags and prepare to check out, you cannot shake the feeling of being watched. You take one last look at the room, wondering if you truly saw what you think you saw. The bloody stain you thought was on the carpet is gone, but the memory of it is seared into your mind. You leave the hotel, stepping back into the bustle of the modern world. But a part of you remains there. New Orleans has many ghost stories, but few are as grounded in tragedy and history as the Provincial. It is not a tale of a single murder or a legendary monster, but of a collective trauma. The sheer scale of the death that occurred there ensures that the energy will never fully dissipate. The ghosts of the Confederate hospital are a permanent population of the French Quarter. They are as much a part of the city as the humidity and the jazz and the river. They are the silent citizens of a city that knows how to dance with death. So if you ever find yourself walking down Chartres Street and you see the inviting sign of the Provincial Hotel, stop and look. Admire the architecture and the beauty of the hanging plants, but pay attention to your instincts. If you feel a sudden chill or a sense of unease, know that you are sensing the layers of history. You are standing on ground that has swallowed more sorrow than any one place should have to bear. And if you decide to stay the night, remember to sleep with one eye open. The surgeon is always on his rounds. The legacy of the Provincial Hotel serves as a dark jewel in the crown of New Orleans' haunted history. It is a place where the narrative of the Civil War is not taught in a classroom, but experienced in the dark. The haunting is a living, breathing entity that evolves with every new guest who crosses the threshold. It is a reminder that the past is never truly dead. It is just waiting for the lights to go out. The screams of the wounded may have faded from our ears, but they are still vibrating in the walls, and in the silence of the night, they might just become audible once again. Ultimately, the Provincial Hotel offers more than just a place to sleep. It offers a confrontation with mortality. It forces us to acknowledge the thin line between existence and oblivion, and the possibility of what comes after. The ghosts are not there to hurt us, but to remind us of the fragility of life. They are the lingering dread that follows us home, the question that has no answer. As you walk away from the hotel, you carry the weight of their stories with you. The Provincial has claimed another witness to its eternal sorrow. The final thought that lingers is whether the spirits will ever find the peace they so desperately seek, or are they destined to roam the halls of building number 5 for all eternity, trapped in their loop of pain. Perhaps they are waiting for a resolution that will never come, a discharge from a hospital that no longer exists. Until then, they will continue to haunt the living, sharing their nightmare with anyone who dares to listen. The Provincial Hotel remains a beautiful cage for the souls of the lost, and the door is always open for new arrivals.